Welcome to HealthCast, the heartbeat of health IT. I'm your host, Nikki Henderson. Today we're chatting with Jennifer Wendel, the new Chief Information Officer at the Department of Health and Human Services. She will discuss her top data and IT priorities for the upcoming year. Jennifer will talk about the modernization process that's underway on the agency's grants.gov online system. She also gives an update on the progress HHS has made with its 2022 to 2026 strategic plan, as well as the remaining goals they're working to achieve over the next 2 years. Hi, I'm Nikki Henderson, a staff writer at GovCIO Media and Research, and today I'm joined by Jennifer Wendel, the Chief Information Officer at the Department of Health and Human Services. Hello, Jennifer. Thanks so much for joining us on the show.
Thanks for having me, Nikki.
Well, I want to begin by congratulating you on becoming the new Chief Information Officer at HHS. That is wonderful.
Thank you very much. It's exciting to be in this role officially.
Yes. Well, Jennifer, can you start off by telling me how your time with the FBI and your other previous experiences helped lead you and prepare you for your current role?
Sure. So I've been with the federal government for a little over 28 years, and I started in 1996 as a biologist at the Federal Bureau of Investigation in their laboratory as a biologist. And as a biologist, I was responsible for looking at items of evidence for biological fluids, for investigative cases, as well as eventually taking over as an examiner where I compared DNA profiles from items of evidence to known samples and did that comparison, wrote the reports, and if needed, testified in court. And while I was a DNA examiner, I also was really involved in testing the CODIS system, which is the Combined DNA Index system. So I was basically what you would call like a heavy user of the system, which was a system that is responsible for comparing DNA profiles in order to provide investigative leads for law enforcement. In 2009, I was selected to become the CODIS unit chief, where I was responsible for managing the CODIS system, the software system for the development, the testing, the deployment, the maintenance of that system, as well as the National DNA Index system. And so that was really where my career transitioned more into an IT position. I ran that unit and that program for about 6 years before going up to headquarters. And at one point, I was asked in 2016 to come up and help stand up a brand new CIO office. We were doing some restructuring at the FBI, so I went over there to help stand up basically their governance section, their enterprise IT governance section, and did that for a few years. And then was the deputy CIO, acting deputy CIO at the FBI from 2020 to 2023. And though I loved working at the FBI, I had an opportunity to apply for the deputy CIO job at HHS, and it felt like it was coming home for me in the sense of really merging the science with the IT. And so I started at HHS in January of 2023 as the deputy CIO. And in December of 2023, I then took over as the acting CIO. And in November, we officially became the Chief Information Officer.
Wow, that is so exciting. Thank you so much for sharing your journey. I really appreciate that. Well, as the new CIO, what are some of your top data and IT priorities?
So I will say definitely one of the main areas is cybersecurity, right? And that I think it's really critical for HHS and all of the systems that we use to make sure that though, IT is critical, we have to really ensure that we're protecting the data because we hold the data for the American people, their health records and really sensitive information. So it's critical that we are constantly looking at our cybersecurity measures and taking risk-based decisions, as well as ensuring that all of our employees, our contractors are appropriately trained to identify phishing tests, because always that one person who clicks a link is a vulnerability that could really cause harm to much of the data that we hold at HHS. We're also working to mature our incident response processes, and so that's really a big piece of the cybersecurity initiative that we have going on. And then also a big part of that is also modernizing our legacy systems. Right, we do every government department, everybody has some systems that really need to be modernized, and we think it's critical that we take a look to see what systems may have end-of-life hardware, which causes a cybersecurity vulnerability that may need some new capabilities. And so we're taking a look across the department, prioritizing those systems based on criticality and mission space, as well as cost and available funding. And we're really taking a look at how we want to modernize those systems to ensure that we're modernizing them in an agile fashion so that we can do continuous improvements in that system. And then I think another piece, which is also one of our priorities, is for ensuring that we're engaging the customer, right? Because often as technology is being built, we forget about the customer. Anybody who's been in tech for a while has built something where they've said, oh boy, this doesn't meet the needs of the customer. And so we want to make sure that from the very beginning, we are listening to how the customer wants and should be interacting with the system. And we're bringing their feedback from all the stakeholders, the business owners, the customers, all bringing that all into the decisions as we're modernizing our legacy systems to ensure that it really is a system that's going to be used. It's going to build trust with the American public, and it will meet the mission of HHS. And I'll add the one last area that I think is really critical for us for a priority is our workforce, right? Ensuring that we are investing in our workforce, especially as technology is constantly changing. We have to make sure that our workforce is trained, that they're trained up, that we're bringing in people with the right credentials and making sure that they're in the right jobs and that they do have the training available to ensure that we're positioning them to be the most successful in their position.
Totally agree. Those are all very, very critical areas that you just mentioned. And I do want to go back to where you were talking about modernizing legacy systems, the agency taking steps to do this. Can you talk about some of the steps that HHS is taking to overcome obstacles while going through this process?
Sure. So one of them is just really determining what systems are legacy, which ones are built on infrastructure that's hard to upgrade, that has end of life services that are very large, complex systems, and potentially also have some cybersecurity vulnerabilities that we've identified. Really, we have to prioritize those systems. We want to consider the performance. We want to consider the state of cybersecurity, the maintenance costs, and the scalability options, right? Because there could be some older systems that are scalable and that might work for the mission, but there's sometimes where we built systems and they really are at the end of their life and we're not able to enhance their capabilities. So we, of course, cannot do everything all at once. And a part of that is really figuring out which ones need to be prioritized and then how are we going to fund that. And then as well as taking a look at the architecture to ensure that it's a solid architecture should that system, if it's not already, be moved to the cloud. And again, sort of what I mentioned earlier is a big part of how are we engaging in that modernization effort from a customer experience. We don't want to just, as the IT folks, build a system and then hope that that's what the customer wants, right? We really need to be engaging the customers from the front end as well as our cybersecurity experts really from day one. They need to be part of the process along the entire process. And that's often a cultural change because customers in the past are used to giving us all the requirements and getting a system at the end. And really what we need to do is make sure that we're building in small chunks that it's what they need, and we grow from there.
Exactly, exactly. That sounds wonderful. Well, prior to you being officially appointed the CIO, you spent almost a year as acting, say, CIO for HHS. Can you talk about some of the measures that have been taken during that time to expand the agency's $7 billion IT portfolio?
Sure. So I think one of the areas is for us, the key is not necessarily to expand the funding of the portfolio, but it's really to have a better understanding of that portfolio. Where are we spending our money on IT? And do we potentially have duplicative systems across the enterprise? And so this past year, I really spent a lot of time looking at our major systems. So the systems that we report up through OMB, and I wanted to learn what the state of those systems were. Are they 508 compliant? It's really important that we're 508 compliant. What's the state of the cybersecurity? Where are they investing in that? Are those systems in the cloud? And that, as well, I was acting CIO, really gave me the ability to see the broad scope across HHS and where we're spending a majority of our funding on IT, and then potentially also in that exercise, learning where some of those legacy systems are, and then starting to make plans on how we may want to think about modernizing those in the future.
Well, Jennifer, can you tell me a little bit about grants.gov and what's being done to enhance accessibility and improve user experience?
Right. So excited to talk about grants.gov. So grants.gov is one of these systems that we are actually in the process right now of modernizing.
Okay.
Many people aren't aware that HHS is the largest grant making agency in the United States, and that the mission of HHS is to enhance the health and well-being of all Americans. And by providing efficient health services through our grant making process, we're basically able to help the American people get services faster. And so what we do is HHS provides funding directly to states, to territories, to tribes, and to educational and community organizations through this grant making process. And so our goal is to modernize grants.gov to be an extremely simple, accessible, and easy to use tool for both posting, finding, as well as sharing and applying for the federal financial assistance. And so our mission is to increase the access to grants and improve the grant experience for everyone. And so we're taking a look at this from two areas. One is for the applicants, so the people applying for the grants. We're trying to improve the way that they would search and discover funding opportunities, making it easy to find and apply for those grant opportunities. And then secondly, for the grant makers. So if you work for a federal grant making agency, we're making it easier for your communities to find the funding that they need. And so we're really trying to make it simple and easy for us to be able to fund these really critically important services in a much quicker, more effective, and efficient manner.
Thank you so much for that. Well, a couple of years ago, HHS released its 2022 to 2026 strategic plan. The agency is sort of at a halfway point now. Can you talk about the progress that has been made so far, as well as some of the challenges that HHS has faced along the way?
So sure. So, since I've taken on this role and really come to HHS, I continue every day to be impressed by all the work that's occurring across HHS, right? But as with any agency, there's always challenges, and always I look at them as opportunities, ways for us to improve, and ways for us to get better. And so one of the HHS priorities is to protect and strengthen equitable access to high quality and affordable healthcare. And so I'm going to go back to themes that I've talked a little bit about today already. And that's really one of the goals, I think, that aligns really closely to that, is to enhance our customer value, right? Enhance the customer experience through thoughtful design of all IT initiatives. And so one of the priority goals for the secretary and the deputy secretary is for customer experience and to improve our customer experience for all of HHS. And so working on an initiative, HHS is working on an initiative through all of our operating divisions where we are taking a look at IT investment and initiatives that we're working towards that will serve the American people and ensure that the IT developers and the application owners that are just redesigning these modernized efforts have the best training in order to ensure that they have human-centric design experience and that they understand the value of that customer input, as well as how to make sure that they're appropriately capturing the value of the customer inputs. And so that's a big part, we believe, and that has been ongoing. We started this project in 23 and it's ongoing, and the team across HHS reports up to the DevSec on a quarterly basis, and we're seeing some great progress in this area. And another area of the HHS strategy is to safeguard and improve the national and global health conditions and outcomes, right? And so again, a common theme I'll talk about is cybersecurity. And so for us, it's really critical that we are protecting that data. And so by enabling the cybersecurity operations and resiliency across the organization makes our practices and SOPs stronger. And for us to have better visibility of what those vulnerabilities across our systems are and how do we quickly mitigate them and ensure that we're protecting that data in an effective manner. So that is always something that's a continuous improvement, right? The threat actors they're good at what they do, unfortunately. And so our goal is to always try to stay ahead of them and always to be able to take a look to see where are they trying to attack, how are they trying to attack, getting all of that pertinent information from our partners, and then making sure that we are putting mitigation in place to protect that data. And so again, something we're constantly evolving towards and constantly improving on and really trying, as I say, try to stay ahead of the threat. And then another area is that I think about for us against the HHS strategy, which is part of it is restore trust and acceleration advancements in science and research for all. And an area that I really think that we're making a lot of progress in is for innovating for better business results. And to me, I think about that as we migrate our systems and our data to the cloud, right? And so when it's appropriate and we're able to migrate systems into the cloud, it does give us more capabilities, a faster way to get capabilities out to our customers. And not all data is meant to be in the cloud. We have to be careful in that decision-making process, but much of our data can be stored in the cloud using those applications that are basically at our fingertips in a much more manner versus building each application independently and separately in a silo. So that's another area where we've made a lot of progress against the HHS strategy.
Wow, well, that is wonderful. I mean, you guys have done wonderful in your progress. And I do appreciate you outlining these key objectives of the strategic plan and what you've accomplished so far. What are you hoping to achieve over the the remaining 2 years?
I would say definitely we want to continue the cloud adoption, right? So, cloud computing is becoming very popular and it's being adopted across all sizes of the government. And one of the areas that we really want to focus on is making sure that our workforce is upskilled and that they are trained in the best manner to use applications in the cloud in a secure fashion, right? We're moving to the cloud, we want to make sure that we're doing it in a secure manner to protect that data. And going to the cloud also allows us to scale resources up or down as needs occur. And so when we're able to scale up an instance really quick in a time of need, but then when maybe that system's not as busy, we're able to scale that system down. That does save us on resources across the board for HHS, which we're always trying to do. We're always trying to make sure that we're getting the best value for our investments when it's needed. What we don't want to do is spin up a whole bunch of instances and then leave them running when the need is not there. So we want to make sure we're carefully monitoring that need and applying it appropriately. And then I think, as we speak of that, it's really workforce again, right? You can hear the same themes, right? And I think it's what we're working on now, and knowing that we're not quite there yet. It's really essential for our workforce to be trained appropriately. And for this, one of the things that's important is, yes, of course, we have to train our IT professionals on the latest and greatest capabilities for information technology, but we also want to make sure that our employees across the agency understand cybersecurity and the risks that they bring to the table all of the time. We also want to make sure from a data perspective that you don't need to necessarily be a data scientist to understand the value of data on an everyday use, and how important data is to be driving decisions for all of the work we're doing across HHS. So really taking a look at what data do we have across HHS? How can we share that data? How can we make sure that it's used effectively and efficiently, and that all of the workforce really understand how data can help drive those decisions? Sometimes, many people do understand that, but there are some people who just need that upskill in that training. And so we want to take a look at upskilling the workforce, not just from the people directly working in the CIO shop, but how can we help all of those employees across HHS?
Perfect. And speaking of data, are there any future data or IT goals that you're excited to talk about?
So yeah, so I think one of the goals that's exciting is accessibility, 508 accessibility, right? Working for HHS, it's one of the areas that I came over. I feel, we're the health and human services, and our systems should be all inclusive, that anybody should be able to use them that would need to be using those systems. And so worldwide, there are 285 million people with some sort of visual impairment, and 275 million people with moderate to profound hearing impairment. And we have many more who have physical, speech, cognitive, neurological disabilities, or limited understanding of English. So accessibility ensures all users can access the products or services regardless of their capabilities, right? And so I personally am a strong believer in ensuring that we do 508 testing before we're deploying systems. I think about it as it's not a compliance area, it's a must do. And just like cybersecurity and customer experience must be thought of from the very beginning of development, so must accessibility. We must be thinking about how can we ensure that the system is accessible to all of our employees. So I'm excited really to make that something that is part of our everyday culture, and make sure that all of our systems are thinking about that from the very beginning of any type of modernization effort. I think another area, and I touched on this a little bit, is advanced analytics, right? So taking the data that we do have and making sure that we have it positioned where we can leverage advanced analytics and machine learning. Everybody's talking about AI, right? And we have to make sure that the foundational aspects of the data are solid and that they're tagged appropriately. We know what the data is that we have, to ensure that as we are implementing AI use cases, that we're protecting the data, that it's reliable, that it's safe, all of those different areas, from a data perspective, we have to consider before we start turning on all of these AI use cases.
Exactly. Well, Jennifer, thank you so much. That was a great conversation. You shared a lot of wonderful new things with us, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. And I want to congratulate you again on your new role. That's super exciting. And thank you for your time and discussing the latest IT and data initiatives going on at HHS.
Well, thank you, Nikki, for having me. I really appreciate speaking with you today.
Thanks for listening to HealthCast, a production of GovCIO Media and Research. To explore our content, visit our website, govciomedia.com. Keep an eye out for new podcast episodes every Tuesday. And if you like what you heard, leave us a review on the podcast platform of your choice. Have a topic you want us to discuss? Contact us at newsletter@govcio.com.